Nearing midnight, the tail end of the season's downpour was still drumming heavily against the thick glass panels of the Adelaide Corporation Tower. The city beyond cast pale blue neon illumination through the curtain of rain, reflecting on the hall floor like a shimmering, trembling ribbon of light. On the 49th floor, where only the steady hum of the climate control system remained, Archie Lambert quietly pushed his custodial cart, each step measured and deliberate. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hands calloused, small scars visible under the white fluorescent fixtures. No one knew the stories those marks told, and no one bothered to inquire. To this world, he was just a guy wearing a janitor badge, passing through their lives without making a sound. At the far end of the corridor, Adelaide sat with her legs crossed on a chair by the vending machine, a crayon clutched in her hand, intently coloring a page. The 7-year-old girl, with slightly messy blonde hair and a face bright as autumn sunlight, was bathed in the glow of one remaining overhead light fixture. Every time she glanced up, she would flash a smile at her father, a grin strong enough to soften Archie's hardened demeanor. "Dad, I finished drawing the bunny," Adelaide announced, holding the paper up toward him. Archie stepped closer, looked down, and offered a soft chuckle. "Looks more like a cat." "It's not a cat, it's a rabbit." "Well then, your rabbit is a little chunky." The girl pouted. "The rabbit eats a lot of carrots, so being chunky is okay." He chuckled softly, then resumed pushing the cart, wiping down a large glass pane overlooking the metropolis. The rain lashed against the thick glass, a consistent, low roar. It was a rare sense of peace in his life, even if it only lasted a few hours each night. Suddenly, the overhead light fixture at the far end flickered repeatedly, followed by a dry, sharp clack sound. The lights went out. The control screen attached to Archie's cart abruptly glowed crimson, displaying a short error message. "System override detected." He froze, his gaze turning stone cold instantly. The 49th floor's electrical grid was separately managed. It should never shut down so abruptly. "Adelaide, get close to Dad," he spoke softly, his voice low. "Did the light bulb blow? Come here, now." The girl slowly picked up her stuffed rabbit and walked toward him, while he swiftly scanned the far end of the hallway. A strange audio cue emerged, the faint sound of a metal door hinge opening, quiet enough that you had to strain to hear it. The emergency exit door at the corridor's end, which had been securely locked just moments ago. From the gloom behind the portal, 3 men materialized. They offered no greeting, carried no cleaning supplies, and were dressed in black tactical gear, with faint reflective bands on their wrists and clear protective eyewear. They moved in perfect unison, like automated figures. Archie stepped back half a pace, his right hand gently guiding Adelaide behind him, toward the elevator bank. The girl distinctly sensed the metallic scent in the air. "Dad!" "Quiet, sweetheart." The 3 operatives continued their advance, slow and steady. The space separating them and Adelaide was shrinking fast. One of the individuals opened a pouch on his back and retrieved something that looked like an electrified baton. There was no time for contemplation. Archie violently shoved the custodial cart forward. The metal apparatus slid across the floor, crashing into the lead operative's knees, sending him sprawling. In that microsecond, Archie surged ahead, driving his elbow squarely into the throat of the first assailant. The man collapsed without a whimper. The second man swung a clenched fist, but Archie blocked it, spun, and used the aggressor's own momentum to propel him into the glass wall. The sound of fracturing glass echoed, spreading like a spider web. The third individual produced a short-edged instrument and charged. Adelaide cried out, her voice cracking. Archie pivoted, seized the mop handle, and swung it horizontally, blocking the thrust. The blade grazed past, slicing a patch of fabric from his sleeve. He counterattacked, jamming the stick's end hard into the man's wrist. The edged instrument clattered away. With a swift sweep, the aggressor slammed against the exterior glass partition. The pane shattered wide open, and the freezing night air flooded the space. "Dad!" Adelaide shrieked, tears streaming as the wind snatched the shiny glass fragments out toward the street below.
Archie turned back to see the girl trembling, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly. He rushed to her side, pulling her close to his chest. The three men were strewn across the floor, gasping or unconscious. Archie held his daughter's shoulder tight, his heart hammering so fiercely it felt like the entire hallway was vibrating with the rhythm. It had all transpired in under 10 seconds. But those 10 seconds dissolved 7 years of his reclusive existence. He bent down, tearing a badge from the pocket of one of the men, a fake security ID for the tower itself. His eyes darted to the wall-mounted control panel. The internal surveillance system was still live. A small lens blinked red rhythmically, aimed directly at them. Someone was observing. Archie scooped up Adelaide and moved swiftly toward the service elevator. While holding his daughter, he pulled a small device from his jacket pocket, an aging signal scanner he had modified years ago. Its screen displayed a constant blinking white wave pattern. The 49th floor was definitely compromised. The only question was by whom.
The elevator wasn't functional. He pulled open the stairwell door and peered down. The steps were pitch black, absolutely silent. He set Adelaide down, instructing her to grip his hand tightly. "We're going down now. Don't look behind you." "What about those men?" "It's okay. I'll explain everything later." They descended, their footfalls echoing in the hollow metallic space. At each floor, Archie glanced through the narrow glass slit in the door, seeing flickering lights. The entire system was infiltrated deeper than he had initially realized. Every level had operational cameras, blinking red constantly, like observing eyes. Upon reaching the 45th floor, he paused, pressing his ear to the door. Faint, indistinct voices drifted from the hall. A man spoke into a handheld transceiver, then fell silent. Archie pulled his daughter into a corner, waited a few heartbeats, and gently opened the door. The hallway was vacant, except for a cleaning cart abandoned mid-route. He silently made his way toward another elevator bank. A security guard stepped out, and before he could utter a word, Archie stopped him. "You can't use that. It's malfunctioning." The guard stared at him, slightly bewildered. "Are you on the night shift? I thought this floor was unstaffed." Archie pointed at a surveillance lens. "Someone has accessed the system. Get your supervisor to check it out immediately." "What's going on?" I said, "Get them now." His tone was so authoritative that the man simply nodded and hurriedly reached for his communicator. Archie picked up Adelaide and continued, without looking back. He knew that in 10 minutes, the entire tower would be swarming, and by then, no one would believe a custodian who claimed his daughter was almost seized. They exited through a side service passage behind the building. The rain remained heavy. Archie pulled his jacket over his daughter's head, his gaze sweeping the distant structures. He sensed something deeply wrong. It wasn't a vague feeling, but the instinct of someone who had once lived in a theater of conflict. "Dad," Adelaide rubbed her eyes, "why do they want to grab me?" Archie squeezed her shoulder. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Who were they?" "I don't know yet, but I will soon." They traversed the small street, where dim light shimmered on puddles. Archie paused at his old work van, opened the door, and settled his daughter into the back seat, covering her with a wool blanket. He climbed into the driver's seat, glancing in the rearview mirror. 3 figures in dark gear stood a few hundred yards away, unmoving in the downpour. They weren't moving, weren't concealed. They wanted him to see them. Archie started the engine, the headlights blazing, but when he looked up again, the figures were gone. He inhaled deeply, gripping the steering wheel tight. In his gut, that familiar feeling he had fought for so long to forget returned, the feeling of being hunted. The vehicle rolled slowly out of the vicinity, the tires slicing across the soaked pavement. Adelaide was curled up in the back, exhausted after the fright, clutching her stuffed rabbit with the torn ear. Archie checked the rearview mirror one last time. Reflected on the rear window, a red light blinked from a surveillance lens affixed to a street lamp pole, still tracking their direction. The next morning, Archie's neighborhood was unusually bustling. Sirens sounded one after another, people called to each other across windows, and even children walking to school stopped to look down the alley.
5 sleek black SUVs were parked in a line outside the old apartment complex, their windows tinted, engines idling steadily. The previous night's rain hadn't fully dried, and mud-caked tires had left long, sleek tracks on the concrete. Archie stood inside his apartment, the frayed curtains slightly ajar. He peeked down and saw the woman exiting the central vehicle. Long trench coat, high heels, walking ramrod straight as if the entire street were her personal runway. He didn't need an introduction to know who she was. Alexandra Rhodes, the CEO of the tower where he worked, labeled by financial media as the Iron Hand of Finance. He couldn't fathom why someone like her would appear in this impoverished neighborhood, but his gut told him last night's incident was far from over. A decisive 3 knocks sounded on the door. Archie scanned the small room, flaking paint on the walls, an old fan turning slowly on the ceiling. Adelaide was still on the bed, hair tousled, hugging the rabbit as if afraid someone might snatch it away. He motioned for her to stay quiet, then stepped forward and opened the door. She stood there, sharp features, blonde hair pulled back neatly, her eyes regarding him not with the surprise of someone encountering a janitor, but with the focused intensity of someone who fully grasped the gravity of the situation. Behind her, 2 men in dark suits, earpieces attached, stood motionless as statues. "Mr. Lambert." She skipped the greeting and went straight to the point. "We need to talk." Archie stepped aside, neither inviting nor hindering her entry. She strode in. The light from the window illuminated her mud-flecked high heels. Alexandra scanned the apartment, an antique wooden table, stacks of books, a small kitchen area with wet dishes. Everything was alien to a person who lived surrounded by brightly lit offices and polished boardrooms. Adelaide came out, curious. She lightly tugged on her father's shirt. "Dad, who is that?" "She's from where I work," he spoke in a low tone. Alexandra looked at the girl, her expression softening for a moment. "Hello, sweetie." Adelaide gave a slight nod, then hid behind her father. Archie motioned for her to take a seat on a chair while he leaned against the table. The room was cramped, the silence so dense they could distinctly hear the vehicles outside. Alexandra removed her gloves, placed them on the table, and pulled a phone from her coat pocket. The screen displayed a grainy image from a security camera, the 49th floor hall, the red lights flickering, and the silhouette of a man moving rapidly to neutralize 3 aggressors in mere seconds. "This is you, and I need to know why a cleaning staff member is capable of this." Archie didn't look at the screen. He crossed his arms, silent. She set the phone down, her tone remaining composed. Those 3 individuals were not random lowlifes. They belonged to an observation group that has been monitoring me for 3 months. My itinerary, meeting schedule, even my personal security detail were compromised. Last night, I altered my work shift in the building, and they appeared exactly when your daughter was present. Are you suggesting they were after you? Yes. And I just happened to be in the right spot? Perhaps, but perhaps not. Archie narrowed his eyes. Are you implying I'm involved? Alexandra looked him straight in the eye. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in data, and the data suggests you are unlike any employee I have ever had. The air in the room thickened. Adelaide sat huddled on the edge of the bed, fiddling with the rabbit's ear. Alexandra glanced over, lowering her voice. The child shouldn't be here while we discuss this. Where she is, I am, Archie replied concisely. She paused for a few seconds, then pulled a small object wrapped in a napkin from her handbag. It was a plastic doll with a smiling face and a string attached to its head. I think you should look at this. Archie accepted it, flipping it over. A small hole, perfectly sized to conceal a device. He pressed his fingernail lightly. The plastic segment popped open, revealing a tiny, black chip the size of his little finger. My daughter brought this home from school, he said softly. Alexandra nodded. I assume so. A new generation listening gadget, retailing for $6,000 on the black market. not something a child buys. Archie sat down, his palm clenched tightly. He looked at the doll, then at his daughter. "Who gave you this?" Adelaide flinched. "A classmate. They said it was an early birthday gift." "Which classmate?" "I don't know their name. They just transferred yesterday."
Archie looked up, his expression changing. The girl lowered her face, her lip trembling. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice gentle. "It's okay. I was just asking." Alexandra watched the exchange, her gaze momentarily softening, but only briefly. She stood up, walked toward the window, and gently pulled the curtain aside, looking down. "Do you know who they are?" Archie answered from behind her. "No. But their movement, their tactics, their gear, they are highly proficient. Someone is paying a lot of currency for them. And they failed. Not for long." She turned back, her look intense. "I don't require protection. I just need to know why you were there and why they want your daughter." Archie stood up. The distance between them was only 1.5 feet. "I don't know. But if you want to find out, you should ask who is behind the tower system breach. It isn't me." They held each other's gaze, neither speaking further. The sound of rain began to patter against the window, the cold, damp scent seeping in. Alexandra returned to the table, opened her phone, and selected a second video clip. This time, it was extracted footage from a morning traffic camera. Adelaide was walking with a group of friends, her small backpack on, her face alight with a smile. In the corner of the frame, a man in a dark jacket, hood up, stood still, aiming a lens directly at the girl. "This was this morning," she said, her voice strained. "This camera is not part of the city grid. It was accessed from a private server. Someone has been tracking her since she left home."
Archie stared for a long time, his face devoid of emotion, but his eyes slowly shifting. He recognized the modus operandi of such individuals: observe, record, identify vulnerabilities. They were forcing him to reveal himself. "Do you have a technical unit capable of counter-surveillance?" "I have an entire department." "Have them re-examine all data from the last 72 hours, any IP address accessing the camera network near this location." "What are you planning to do?" "Know who's watching, so we know whether to run or fight." Alexandra remained silent. She realized that voice was not that of an average man. It belonged to someone who had issued commands in chaos, someone who had endured things she only read about in classified reports. She sat down, watching him intently. "Were you in the military?" "No." "Then what was what you did last night?" "Protecting my daughter." The answer was brief, but so weighty that Alexandra didn't inquire further. As she prepared to depart, Archie walked to the door. "You should switch vehicles. Don't use the same routes anymore. They know your movement patterns." "And you?" "I don't have a fixed route." She nodded, stepping outside. The cold breeze swept into the room, lifting Adelaide's drawing paper. The door closed, leaving behind a heavy silence. Late that evening, as the last remnants of sunlight faded from the gray apartment blocks, Archie was fixing the window lock when he heard a faint whirring sound outside the glass. He looked up and saw a small, luminous dot hovering. A drone, a mini model, only the size of a hand, its red light blinking incessantly. It hung motionless for a second, as if observing, then rotated its lens toward the room. Archie didn't hesitate. He grabbed the mop handle nearby, flipped the window latch, shoved it open hard, and swept outward. The impact diverted the drone's path, causing it to strike the opposite wall and drop to the floor below. He looked down, seeing no one. Adelaide rushed over. "Dad, what was that?" "Just someone's toy," he murmured. "Go inside." The girl obediently retreated. Archie closed and locked the window, then drew the curtain. He peered through the small remaining gap, confirming the drone's light was gone. The Adelaide Corporation Tower loomed in the city center, like a gleaming blade. In the gloomy afternoon, the glass facade reflected the pale silver sky, stretching its shadow across the street below. Archie had never entered the building through the main guest entrance. He was accustomed to using the service entrance, swiping his card, nodding briefly, and pushing his cleaning cart. Today was different. The automatic glass doors parted as he and Adelaide approached. Two operatives in dark clothing bowed slightly and stepped aside. Adelaide clung tightly to her father's hand, her eyes gazing up at the high, glittering ceiling. Everything felt like another world to her. Thick carpet, subtle wood scent, the sound of shoes echoing far down the wide corridor. Archie silently followed Alexandra into a private elevator, his unease growing. He still wasn't sure leaving the old apartment was the right choice, but after the drone incident the previous night, he understood staying put was more perilous. The elevator opened onto the 60th floor, the top level, where Alexandra's personal office was isolated from the rest of the tower. The space was bright, tranquil, everything arranged with precise detail. Vast glass walls offered a sweeping view of the entire city, with the bay and bridges fading into the distant haze. Archie stepped inside, the golden light reflecting on his weather-beaten face. Adelaide tugged his arm, whispering, "Dad, this lady's house is huge." Archie smiled faintly. "It's not her house, sweetheart. It's where she works." Alexandra signaled for the two security personnel outside to depart, then closed the door. Silence settled in the room, only broken by the light drumming of rain on the glass. She turned back, arms crossed. "You can relax. There are no cameras operating here except the ones I control." "What about your staff?" "No one is authorized on this floor without my direct summons." Adelaide was escorted to the sofa area, where a small table with paper and colored pencils was waiting. The girl quickly sat down, absorbed in drawing, seemingly forgetting the recent turmoil. Archie sat opposite Alexandra. They remained silent for a moment, until she finally spoke. "The attackers from the other night, my tech team traced them through a sequence of shell accounts. They were hired through 15 layers of front companies, and at the end of that chain, she placed a printed photo on the table. Is the name Dermot Rispin."
Archie looked at the image, a middle-aged man, salt and pepper hair, a forced smile in a gray suit. A chill washed through him, from his chest to his gut. That name, he had thought, was buried with his past. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely certain," Alexandra replied, her eyes locked on his. "I have heard that name before. 20 years ago, my father mentioned he was the intermediary in an abduction. Mine." The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Archie looked up, his gaze settling on her eyes. "Yours?" Alexandra nodded. She walked over to the glass wall, her voice dropping. "When I was 14, I was seized from my boarding school. My father was a senator then. He had many adversaries. They confined me in a cold bunker, windowless, with only a flickering yellow lamp. I overheard them arguing about currency, about timing. I thought I would perish there." She paused, looking down at the traffic stream below. "But someone arrived, a man, not in uniform, who never gave his name. He severed my restraints, pulled me through the woods all night long. I distinctly remember the smell of mud, the faint aroma of propellant, and his hand, warm, strong, and trembling. We ran until I heard a helicopter. When I woke up, he was gone. No one knew who he was. The law enforcement stated it was an unidentified special operations squad. I searched for him for years, but found nothing." Archie said nothing. His hand gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Images flickered through his mind. The damp forest night, the faint footsteps behind him, the girl shaking in his arms, the sporadic beam of the flashlight, and the voice he had used to reassure her. "Don't panic, kid. We're almost there." Alexandra turned back, looking directly at him. "You were the individual, weren't you?" Archie remained silent. He couldn't deny it, nor could he confirm it. His face was impassive, but his eyes provided the answer. Alexandra watched him for a few more seconds, then turned away. In that moment, her usual composure fractured, revealing something vulnerable, almost a sense of relief. "I knew it couldn't be chance. Perhaps I owe you more than I realized." He spoke softly, his voice low. "You were just a child then. I didn't want anyone to remember me."
She gave a slight nod, as if accepting this, and returned to the table. Dermot Risbin disappeared right after that incident. He was a fixer for high-level criminal organizations, specializing in trafficking information, hostages, and human lives. But if he's back, Archie cut in. He's not back because of you. He's back because of me. I dismantled his operation that year. Half his crew perished, and he lost all his connections. I thought he was gone for good in Moldova. Clearly not. Alexandra sat down and opened her laptop. The screen displayed a personnel list and a security schematic. We examined the internal data. 3 individuals were compromised or bought off. 1 maintenance worker with access to the 49th floor, a middle-level manager with employee data access, and an assistant who was threatened with harm to their family. All 3 were linked to the same chain of untraceable payments. "Dermot," Archie stated. "Right. He's buying his way into my system. He knows I was rescued by you. He wants to recreate that event. Only this time, no one will arrive in time." Silence enveloped the room. Adelaide had fallen asleep on the sofa, her stuffed rabbit slipping from her hand. Archie looked at her, his eyes dwelling on the slight scrape from her cheek from the previous night. "What does he gain by seizing you?" "Revenge on my father, and now, perhaps, on you." "No, this time he wants to use my daughter to lure me out." Alexandra looked at him, knowing he was correct. "What are you going to do?" "Prepare." "For what?" "For him to make his move sooner than we anticipate." She leaned back slightly in her chair, hands clasped. "Do you believe you can protect them, both me and the girl?" "I don't think it. I know I have to." Outside the glass, thunder rumbled faintly. The city lights came on, thousands of them reflecting on their faces. In that glow, both realized their deepest commonality wasn't power or past history, but the deep-seated apprehension of those who have once faced complete loss. A small ping sounded from Alexandra's laptop. She opened the folder. New characters had just appeared on the screen. "Greetings from the past. Game on." Archie sprang to his feet, moving closer. The line of characters flickered for a few seconds, then vanished, replaced by a still image, a photograph of Adelaide walking to school this morning, accompanied by the red text, "This time, no one escapes." Alexandra looked at Archie. She saw that his eyes were no longer calm, but held something else, the absolute focus of someone who had stared down ultimate peril. He drew the curtain closed, securing the security system with a few quick inputs on the control console. "His game has started," he said, his voice lowering. "And this time, we have no choice but to play along."
3 days blurred by in a semi-conscious haze. Adelaide struggled to sleep peacefully. Whenever the tower's hallway lights flickered slightly, she would jump up, looking anxiously for her father. Archie stayed awake with her until dawn, his eyes constantly fixed on the glass window. The darkness outside felt like someone was watching back. He said nothing, only gripping her small hand, inwardly wondering how long he could keep her hidden. On the morning of the 4th day, Alexandra's security team reported a discovery that sent shockwaves through the tower. 2 more listening devices were found. One lodged in an electrical socket on the 58th floor hall, another concealed inside a ceiling sprinkler head in a meeting room.
It wasn't just about infiltration. The aggressor knew the building's infrastructure better than the blueprints. Alexandra slammed the report onto the table, her voice taut. "We are living in an anthill. Everything we thought was secure has been hollowed out from the inside." Archie stood behind her, arms crossed, silently observing. He looked around the transparent glass conference room, seeing the sweat on his security staff. The cold of the climate control couldn't override the suffocating tension. He recognized this type of hostile action, not a threat, but a probe of their defensive reaction. Just then, the ceiling lights flickered. A small click. Then the fire safety system activated. The dry sprinkler heads didn't release water, but opaque white smoke. In seconds, the room was engulfed in artificial fog. Everyone coughed, seeking the exit. Alexandra grabbed her files and crouched down, running. Archie raised a hand to stop her, his eyes scanning. In the haze, a figure darted past the side door, fast, low, and definitely not a staff member. "Get down," he bellowed. He snatched a nearby fire extinguisher and hurled it directly where the dark shape had vanished. The sound of metal meeting glass, a puff of smoke, no reply. He pursued, but when the smoke cleared, the side door was ajar. Only a small piece of torn fabric remained caught on the hinge, black material, the type used in field operations uniforms. Security arrived minutes later. The result: no one hurt, no one seen. The system had been remotely controlled from a ghost server located overseas. Alexandra stood in the dissipating smoke, her face pale. She whispered, almost breathless, "They got onto my floor." Archie didn't answer. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen lit up. A message arrived. No sender ID. The text was short. "Can you hold her a second time?" Below it was an 8-second video clip. Adelaide walking along a sidewalk, holding bread, sunlight slanting across her hair. Behind her, a figure wearing a reflective mask walked slowly, close enough to reach out and touch her. Archie clenched the phone, his knuckles grinding. Alexandra saw his expression shift and stepped closer. After viewing the video, she couldn't speak, standing rigidly, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Sweat beaded on her temples. The darkness in her mind burst open, bringing back the memory of being 14, the cramped room, the footsteps on the stairs, and the captor's breath near her ear. Archie placed a hand on her shoulder, the pressure just enough to stop her shaking. "Look at me," he commanded. "He wants you afraid. Don't give him that." Alexandra looked up, her eyes wet. "I'm not a combatant. I'm not used to being pursued like this. No one is, but we can flip the script and set a trap." He spoke the words as quietly as a whisper, but his eyes held a chilling intensity. Alexandra took a step back. "What do you mean?" "We fake a change in your route, set up a clandestine meeting at a public location where he's guaranteed to send personnel. I'll be there. As for you, keep the girl somewhere he wouldn't expect." "You intend to engage directly?" "If you don't sever the head, the beast returns indefinitely. I'm done running." Alexandra studied him for a long moment, then turned to the glass wall where smoke still lingered. "I used to think this tower was a fortress. Now I realize it's just a glass cage." "True," Archie agreed, "and now we are inside the beast's belly." That evening, as Adelaide slept in the secure room, the soft yellow nightlight illuminating her young face, Alexandra stood in the hall with Archie. They remained silent for several minutes. The city below was still, as if it too was waiting. "Aren't you apprehensive?"
she inquired.
"Yes," he admitted, his eyes fixed on the door. "Apprehensive about losing my daughter. Apprehensive about repeating old failures. And I'm apprehensive about being taken again. Then we share that much." She looked at him, the man who was once just a quiet shadow with a mop, now standing before her as if he belonged to a different sphere entirely. His face showed clear fatigue, but his eyes were unwavering. In that moment, she believed that if anyone could navigate them out of this nightmare, it was him. Archie's phone vibrated again. A new message. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., I will reclaim what was lost. Attached were coordinates for the old docklands by the river, a location abandoned for decades. He showed her the screen. Alexandra understood. This was the open challenge. You're going? He likely wants me there. I'll ensure he regrets it. And me? You stay put. Hold on to the girl. Trust me. Alexandra nodded, but her voice was faint. If you don't come back. Archie looked at her. I will return. He has never been able to defeat me. And this time, he stands no chance. She stood still as he turned away, her hand unconsciously touching the cold glass door. Inside, Adelaide stirred, clutching her stuffed rabbit.
Near midnight, the Adelaide Corporation Tower was so silent they could hear the wind whistling outside the glass. The city below was shrouded in mist, the lower buildings appearing like mute shadows. On the top floor, Adelaide slept soundly in the fortified room, 2 armed guards seated by the door, their vigilance absolute. Alexandra stood in the outer corridor, gazing through the frosted glass barrier. Archie was double-checking every lock, every exit, every stretch of hallway connecting the rooms. He hadn't slept for 2 nights. Neither of them spoke it aloud, but they both knew. Tonight would be different. 12 a.m. A dry clack echoed from somewhere unseen, small but powerful enough to shatter the total stillness. The internal lights abruptly went dark. The entire tower was plunged into absolute blackness. The first sound afterward was the security alarm system screeching, then abruptly silenced, cut off mid-warning. Archie looked up. The system had been hijacked. It started, he murmured. A second later, the floor shook slightly. From a distance, a long, tearing metallic sound rang out, an elevator car free-falling. Several floors below, the sound of a huge impact reverberated upward, like a captive beast smashing its head against the bars. Fire containment doors automatically slammed shut, sealing off the entire hallway. Cold air poured from the illegally controlled ventilation system, mingled with the ozone scent of burning circuitry. Alexandra snatched up her radio. Floor 60, report status. No response. She looked at Archie, who already had a metal baton in his hand. Get Adelaide into the double-locked room. Don't come out until I return. Where are you going? The opposite way. She started to protest, but he was already gone into the corridor's darkness, his shape merging into the absolute blackness, as if becoming part of the air. The entire tower began to emit fragmented sounds, hurried footsteps, doors shutting, metal on metal. The system was hacked to the core. All surveillance cameras spun wildly, then froze. Below the 58th floor, a team of dark-clad individuals had breached the perimeter. They wore night vision goggles, silenced automatics, and jamming gear on their ears. Their every step was precisely synchronized. Archie moved along the hallway, his back pressed against the wall, straining to hear every sound. He heard the sound of hard-soled boots on the glass floor about 100 feet away, then a faint murmur of a radio. Without haste, he grabbed a fire extinguisher from its bracket, turned the valve, and sprayed forcefully into a bend in the corridor. White chemical foam erupted, blinding. In the artificial haze, he lunged, slamming the cylinder directly into the head of the lead operative. The man collapsed without a sound. The second man whirled, but before he could raise his sidearm, Archie hurled the extinguisher straight into his face. The impact was powerful enough to knock him backward. 2 more rushed forward, their helmet-mounted lamps illuminating the hall. Archie retreated, picking up a shard of broken glass from the floor. As the light beam reached him, he threw hard. The glass zipped through the air, slashing across one man's face, blood spattered, and instantly the light went out. Before the remaining man could react, Archie was upon him, striking a direct blow to his neck. The hallway fell silent again, save for heavy breathing. Above,
Alexandra heard the muffled impacts echoing from afar, her heart pounding. She lowered her voice and ordered the 2 guards, "Hold position. If anyone approaches besides Archie, fire." She rushed to the control screen in her private office, attempting to restore the system. The screen flickered for a few seconds, then displayed a face. Dermot Rispin. He was sitting in a dark room, faint light from a screen behind him. "Hello, Miss Rhodes," his voice grating. "I told your father that one day I'd return. It's a shame he's not around to witness it."
"What do you want?" Alexandra forced herself to remain composed. "You know, don't you? I merely wish to reclaim what I lost, my standing, my currency, and the old debt from 2 decades ago. But now I have an additional prize, a man who thought he could outrun his shadow." The screen changed the image. It was Adelaide, sleeping in the secure room, the angle from above. Alexandra felt a cold wave wash over her. "Where are you?" "Closer than you imagine." The screen went blank. On a lower level, Archie was moving along the emergency staircase when the emergency lights flared red. The faint smell of smoke spread. Someone had activated the ignition source on the 49th floor. He heard the heavy sound of footfalls ascending. They were too numerous. He stripped off his jacket, wrapping it around his right forearm. As the first group entered his line of sight, he launched a blow from the hip, sweeping both men off their feet. Another rushed forward, sidearm ready, but Archie violently pushed the steel door, pinning the man between the door and the wall. The weapon's grip hammered into Archie's ribs, a sharp pain, but he held the position. Finally, he wrestled the sidearm free, threw it down the stairs, and kicked the man down after it. Smoke began to pour more heavily. He opened a door leading to the glass-walled corridor. The wind from outside rushed in, carrying the heat of the fire below. The glass shuddered violently. A dark figure lunged, an operative on a harness, a compact sidearm in hand. They collided fiercely, sliding across the floor, the glass beneath their feet cracking wide open. Archie managed to grab the safety line on the operative's harness, yanking hard, pulling him closer. A knee strike to the chest sent the operative sprawling backward, but the line was attached to an anchor point, pulling Archie toward the edge of the fracturing glass. The wind suctioned outward, strong enough to steal his breath. They hung precariously over the void. The operative thrashed, attempting to reach the edged instrument attached to his belt. Archie clamped down on the line, using his knee to pin the man down. The final impact caused the anchor to dislodge. Both plunged onto a lower section of the hallway. Archie landed hard, pain shooting through his back, but he scrambled up. The operative was less fortunate. His neck snapped, lying still. He limped toward the nearest control panel, trying to restore the emergency system. No response. Only one option remained, the highest floor. Dermot would be waiting there. The 60th floor, the main glass office. The door was blown open. Flames from the lower floor licked upward, casting a crimson glow on the walls. Dermot stood in the center of the room, gray suit, holding a small device that emitted a blue light, the detonator for the fuel source now burning on the 49th floor. Behind him stood 2 men, weapons aimed. "Welcome back, Ghost. 20 years and you haven't changed. Still the guy wrecking my livelihood." "You should be interred in Moldova," Archie retorted, advancing slowly.
"And miss the chance to see you meet your end?" Dermot smirked, raising the device. "One button press and floors 49 and 50 detonate. No survivors. But I prefer watching you squirm first." He clicked it. Attack sound echoed, red lights flashed. Alarms blared throughout the structure. Flames leapt high through cracked glass, smoke flooding the room. Archie rushed forward before the 2 armed men could fire. The first strike sent a sidearm flying from one man's grasp. The second, he incapacitated the other with a throw of a swivel chair to the face. Dermot backed away, producing a small caliber handgun. The weapon discharged. The projectile grazed Archie's shoulder, blood sprayed. He continued his advance, each step heavy as a hammer blow. Dermot fired twice more, both missing. As he squeezed the trigger one last time, the hammer seized.
Archie was upon him, grabbing his collar, slamming him against the glass wall. The pane fractured. Wind hissed through the gap. "You destroyed everything I had," Dermot screamed, "because I saved a child, and today I do it again." He delivered one final, decisive blow. The glass shattered completely. Dermot was sent flying backward, plummeting into the fiery void. The detonator dropped from his hand, struck the floor, and broke apart. Archie stumbled, collapsing, blood from his shoulder soaking his shirt. The secure room door burst open. Adelaide rushed out, throwing her arms around him. Alexandra followed, her face streaked with smoke and tears. "Dad," the girl sobbed hysterically. Archie held her tight, forcing a faint smile, his breath ragged. "It's okay, daughter. It's over." Alexandra stood a step away, looking at the father and child. Amidst the smoke and flames, her eyes reflected both immense relief and a catch in her throat. She stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We have to go, now." Archie nodded, lifting the girl. The three of them ran along the burning corridor, past shards of glass, the intense glow of the fire illuminating their faces. Behind them, the tower roared like a wounded giant, but inside it, the survivors continued their escape from hell. As the emergency exit door burst open, cold wind rushed in, extinguishing the smell of smoke. Adelaide turned back to look at her building, half brilliantly lit, half dark. "It's concluded," she whispered. Archie set Adelaide down, wiping a smear of blood from her forehead.
The scent of antiseptic mixed with faint coffee permeated the hospital room. Morning light filtered through the white curtain, illuminating Archie's face as he lay still in the bed. Thick bandages were wrapped around his left shoulder, his chest covered in fresh abrasions. Beside him, Adelaide was curled up in a cushioned chair, her head resting on her father's arm, sleeping soundly after days of exhaustion. Every time she shifted, Archie would open his eyes, gently pulling the blanket over her. The door opened softly. Alexandra entered, still in a simple suit, without makeup, her hair loose. She glanced around, then noticed the sleeping Adelaide. A smile briefly touched her lips, genuine and surprisingly tender. "The physician said you need at least 2 weeks of recovery. The physician also said I should avoid stress, so you just mentioned work, so I'm feeling stressed already." Alexandra offered a small laugh, then grew serious. "Someone wants to see you." 3 men in dark suits entered. Sunglasses, measured strides. The man in the middle presented a badge, Department of Homeland Security. "Mr. Lambert," he said matter-of-factly, "we reviewed your old file. Our command structure wants you back. Full authority, 3 times the pay, protection for you and your daughter. Special assignments. We need men like you." Archie looked down at his hands, old scars interwoven with new wounds. He paused for a long moment, then responded, "I used to believe I couldn't live without conflict, but now I only wish to live to watch my daughter mature. I regret that I must decline." The man nodded, unsurprised. "If you change your mind, the door is always open." "I won't," Archie stated, his voice quiet but final. They departed. The door closed, leaving only the steady thump of the heart monitor. Alexandra remained standing there, a cup of coffee in her hand. "You know, I thought you would accept." "Are you disappointed?" "No, actually, I'm relieved." She set the cup down, sat by the bed, and looked over at Adelaide. "I have a different proposition. No firearms, no pursuit. Head of security for Adelaide Corporation. Good pay, secure housing, flexible hours, and—" She hesitated. "It's for Adelaide too." Archie gave a tired smile. "You think I'm suited to guard financial elites? I think you're suited to guard what matters. And here, what matters most is that little girl." He looked at her, then at his daughter sleeping soundly, her long lashes slightly fluttering.
For a moment, all the noise of the outside world seemed to vanish. "Agreed," he said softly. "I accept."
3 months later, spring had arrived and the city was quieter than usual. The old apartment complex was now just a memory. The father and daughter had moved into a new corporate apartment, a building with a rooftop garden and 24/7 guarded staff. Adelaide was back in school, no longer fearful when the sun set. She began drawing again, this time creating pictures filled with sunlight and a father with a gentle smile. Archie went to work every day, his new security uniform crisp, his employee badge gleaming. Every time he entered the tower, he still felt the city's heartbeat, but no longer felt adrift. Alexandra occasionally visited the security office, checking files, always pausing long enough to ask, "Is Adelaide doing well today?" And he would simply smile. "She's learning to make pancakes. If the kitchen explodes, I'm holding you responsible." In the evenings, he took his daughter to the rooftop. The breeze was cool, the city lights flickering in the distance. Adelaide pointed to the sky, where a meteor had just streaked past. "Dad, I wish we could stay here forever." He nodded softly. "If you wish for it, it will probably come true." One sunny weekend morning, the Central Park was bathed in light. Adelaide sat on a swing, her legs pumping high, blonde hair flying loose. Archie gave her a gentle push from behind, a fleeting smile on his face. Nearby, Alexandra sat on a wooden bench, wearing a simple sweater, a hot cup of coffee in her hand. She was no longer the icy executive who could command fear in the boardroom. Today, she was a woman looking at the two people she cared for most. "Hiya, Dad!" Adelaide laughed loudly, the sound echoing among the trees. Archie feigned seriousness. "If you fly off that seat, don't blame me if I can't catch you." "You always catch me." The statement made him pause. For a moment, the old memories, smoke, blood, the loud thump of weapons discharging, flashed by like a bad dream. Then everything dissolved, leaving only his daughter's laughter and the warm sun on his shoulder. Adelaide hopped off the swing and ran toward Alexandra, pulling her hand. "Miss Alex, come play with us." Alexandra smiled, shaking her head. "I don't know how to play that." "It's okay. Dad'll teach you." The girl took both their hands, pulling them closer together. Her small hand nestled between their two larger hands, warm and strangely comforting. "We're like family, aren't we?" Archie and Alexandra both froze. They looked at each other, unspoken, only shared smiles. Genuine smiles, without caution, without distance. Adelaide gripped their hands tighter, her clear eyes looking up. "Dad, I want ice cream." "Right now? It's still morning." "Morning ice cream tastes better, though." Archie looked at Alexandra. She shrugged. "She has a point." They walked together, hand in hand. Sunlight streamed through the trees, casting long, bright streaks across the path. In the distance, the small ice cream van chimed its familiar tune. Adelaide ran ahead, hair flying, her laughter ringing clearly. Archie and Alexandra followed, their steps slower, but moving together toward the light. When the three sat down on the park bench, each holding an ice cream cone, strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, the wind carried the faint, sweet scent, blending with the sound of birdsong. Adelaide took a bite, ice cream smearing her mouth, beaming. "Dad, I have to tell you something real." "What is it?" "I think Mom up in heaven is watching me, and I bet she's really happy." Archie was silent, then nodded softly. "Yes, she would be very proud, because you are brave, and because you taught me how to smile again."
The girl rested her head on his shoulder. Alexandra looked at the two of them, her eyes glistening, but saying nothing. The wind gently rustled the trees, Adelaide's laughter lingering throughout the park. High above, the sun shone brightly after days of rain. One old chapter had concluded, with fire, conflict, and darkness. And here, beneath the clear blue sky, a new chapter was beginning, warm, tranquil, and full of promise.